The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as spectators leaned in, eager for the latest small-town spectacle. Some were there for their own cases, others simply to witness the drama unfold. At the front, Judge Richard Calloway adjusted his glasses and peered down at the elderly woman standing before him. Jada Thompson, 75 years old, stood tall with her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her back was straight, her shoulders squared. An unexpected display of quiet defiance. The judge didn't like it. "You have any idea where you are, ma'am?" Calloway asked, his voice laced with the tired arrogance of a man who believed he had seen it all. Jada tilted her head slightly, studying him just as intently. "I do, Your Honor," she said, her voice calm and unwavering. Calloway let out a sharp breath, tapping his gavel against the bench. "Really? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you think this is some kind of joke, walking in here standing as if you have nothing to lose." His gaze hardened. "Let me remind you, you're in contempt of court." A ripple of chuckles spread across the courtroom. The audience, expecting an old woman to be intimidated, exchanged amused glances. To them, this was entertainment. But Jada didn't react. Instead, she exhaled softly and spoke, her voice slicing through the laughter. "Contempt of court," she said evenly, "is defined under 18 U.S. Code SS 401 as behavior that obstructs justice, disrespects judicial authority, or willfully disobeys a court order. It carries a penalty of up to 6 months in jail and a fine. However, in non-criminal proceedings, the punishment is at the court's discretion." Silence. Even Calloway faltered for a brief moment before scoffing. "Oh, so you've been doing some Googling. Congratulations." Jada's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. "No, sir, I just know the law." Calloway leaned forward, his expression darkening. "Oh, you know the law, do you?" he asked mockingly. "What, you watched a couple of courtroom dramas and think you're the next Thurgood Marshall?" Laughter erupted from the audience, louder this time. Even the bailiff let out a quiet breath of amusement. Jada remained unshaken. She let the noise settle before answering, her voice calm and unwavering. "No, Your Honor. I know the law because I've lived it." The murmurs in the room changed in tone. People shifted in their seats, curiosity now overtaking their initial amusement. Even Calloway seemed taken aback before covering it with another scoff. "Lived it?" he repeated. "If you're such an expert, why are you standing in my courtroom accused of contempt instead of sitting at counsel's table where the real attorneys are?" Jada took a slow breath. "I was standing up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves." Calloway let out a dry laugh. "Oh, well, aren't you a saint? And what exactly did you do that was so noble?" Jada's fingers curled slightly against the fabric of her dress, but she held her ground. "I pointed out that a public defender failed to file a necessary motion, one that could have changed the entire course of his client's case. When I tried to explain, I was removed from the courtroom and charged with contempt." A murmur spread through the crowd. This was no longer just entertainment, it was something real. Calloway's amusement faded slightly as he leaned back in his chair. "So, let me get this straight," he said slowly. "You, a 75-year-old with no formal legal education, think you know the law better than a trained public defender?" Jada exhaled through her nose. "Yes." A few gasps rippled through the crowd. The judge narrowed his eyes. "All right then, genius. Impress us. What motion are you talking about?" Jada didn't hesitate. "A motion to suppress evidence under the Fourth Amendment." The room shifted. Even the public defender, who had been watching with a vaguely disinterested expression, suddenly sat up straighter. The prosecutor shifted in her seat, glancing down at her files as if searching for a rebuttal she didn't have. Calloway squinted at her. "You expect me to believe that you just read the Fourth Amendment in your spare time and figured that out?" Jada let out a small breath of amusement. "No, Your Honor, I read the case law." A hushed silence fell over the room. Even Calloway's skepticism faltered. Jada continued, her voice steady and precise. "Map v. Ohio 367 U.S. 643. 1961, she said. The Supreme Court ruled that evidence obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment is inadmissible in state courts. That means any evidence obtained through an unconstitutional search cannot be used in trial. The weight of her words settled over the room. The stenographer had momentarily stopped typing. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Jada pressed forward. Arizona v. Gant, 556 U.S. 332, 2009. She continued. This ruling further established that a warrantless vehicle search is only justified under two conditions. She lifted one finger. First, if the arrestee is within reaching distance of the vehicle at the time of the search. Another finger joined the first. Second, if the police have reason to believe the vehicle contains evidence related to the offense of arrest. She lowered her hands to the table and leaned forward slightly. Neither applied in this case, Your Honor. The tension in the room thickened. For the first time, Calloway didn't have a response. The audience, once laughing, now sat in stunned silence. The prosecutor's grip on her pen tightened. Even the public defender looked shaken. Calloway steepled his fingers and regarded Jada with newfound consideration. The silence stretched long enough for the hum of the fluorescent lights to become audible. Finally, he shook his head slightly and muttered under his breath. "Well," he said, his voice quieter than before, "that's a hell of an argument." And in that instant, Jada knew she had just changed the entire direction of the case. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Calloway, a man who prided himself on controlling the room, suddenly found himself unsure of his next words. The weight of Jada's legal argument pressed down on him, leaving him momentarily speechless. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, flipping through her case file with a forced air of confidence. She knew, just as everyone else did, that Jada had thrown a wrench into the proceedings. Even the public defender, who had initially dismissed her as an overstepping bystander, now looked at her with something bordering on respect. Finally, Calloway cleared his throat. "That's quite a summary, Miss Thompson," he said, regaining his composure. "But legal definitions don't win cases. Context does." Jada met his gaze steadily. "Then let's talk about context, Your Honor." A few murmurs rippled through the audience, but no one dared to laugh this time. Jada adjusted her stance, taking a measured breath. "The Fourth Amendment protects citizens against unreasonable searches and seizures," she said, her voice steady. "In this case, the evidence in question was obtained through a warrantless search, one that fails both criteria established in Arizona v. Gant." The prosecutor stiffened. "Objection," she called out, her voice sharper than before. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defendant's legal representation—" "Failed to file the motion," Jada finished for her, her tone cutting but controlled. "And the court still has the responsibility to ensure justice is upheld." A few people in the audience nodded, their initial amusement now replaced with genuine intrigue. Even Calloway leaned back slightly, considering her words. "Are you suggesting that the defense counsel was negligent?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Jada didn't hesitate. "I'm stating a fact, Your Honor. Negligence or not, the motion should have been filed, but it wasn't, and now an innocent person is paying the price for it." The weight of her words hung in the air. The prosecutor crossed her arms, her frustration evident. The public defender, looking equal parts impressed and embarrassed, remained silent. Judge Calloway drummed his fingers against the bench. His initial amusement was gone, replaced by something more complicated, something close to respect. For a long moment, the judge said nothing. Then, with a sigh, he turned toward the prosecution. "Counselor," he said, "do you have a response to Ms. Thompson's argument?" The prosecutor hesitated. She could argue, but the damage was done. Jada had used case law to back up her claim, and there was no easy way to dismiss it without looking incompetent. I'll need to review the circumstances further, Your Honor," she finally said, her words measured. Calloway exhaled. "That's what I thought." He turned to Jada, eyeing her like she was an unexpected variable in a carefully controlled equation. "Well, Ms. Thompson," he said, his tone shifting, "it seems you've given us quite a bit to think about." Jada remained silent, waiting. The judge tapped his gavel lightly against the bench, then leaned forward. "In light of the argument presented, the contempt charge is dismissed," he announced. "Furthermore, I will personally review the defendant's case to ensure that their constitutional rights were not violated." Gasps rippled through the room. The prosecutor pursed her lips but said nothing. The public defender exhaled in relief, clearly realizing how close he had come to a professional disaster. Jada allowed herself the smallest of smiles. She hadn't just won her case. She had forced the court to acknowledge its own oversight. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the energy lingered. People whispered among themselves, recapping what had just happened. The judge, usually untouchable, had been challenged in a way no one had expected. Jada stepped toward the exit when she felt a presence beside her. She turned to find the public defender standing there, looking both sheepish and impressed. I should have caught that," he admitted. Jada met his gaze and simply nodded. "Yes, you should have." He let out a quiet chuckle. "You ever thought about going to law school?" Jada gave a knowing smile. "I think I just proved I don't need to." She walked past him, her steps steady and unshaken, leaving behind a courtroom that would not forget her name any time soon.